We're honored to be asked today to share a few memories and a little bit of history about Missouri area there of the church.
Make sure they know we weren't over Adam on down.
Well, we weren't. It was in our mission, but we had no jurisdiction there. Somebody else is the mission president of Adam on Diamond, right? We had the privilege to meet Elder Child when he was back there on one trip. He was there with William Walker, if I remember right. Yeah. And appreciate any insights you have as we go along. I'm happy to have you interject and share. Adam's love. I'm an old farm boy from Lake Utah. I was a contractor as my career. A blue collar guy that President Newcorp asked me to put on a white shirt for 3 years, and we were honored to do so and serve in such a sacred place at a most exciting time in the history of this world to do most important work on the planet. Let's gather Israel. A little history on us. We went on a church history tour to this sacred place 20 years ago. And we started in Independence, and they took us up to Liberty and Richmond and went to the cemetery in Richmond, I remember. Far west, we went to Hans Mill. And it was all neat and special. But I remember walking out on the overlook at Adam on Diamond, and brothers and sisters, electricity filled my soul as I gazed across that valley without really understanding or knowing the past or the future, which I do now. So we're going to kind of we're going to mix the past with the current and maybe a little bit of the future as we go through this. We're going to start at Independence, where the mission headquarters were, the mission office. That's the visitor center. How many of you have been to Missouri and seen the sites? Some of you. Okay, the visitor center was built or dedicated in 1971. That is facing north. If you're standing there and you look north, you see, what's the next one? Oh, all right. That's what you see, the Community of Christ Temple, or their headquarters or office. They are former brothers and sisters. So we hope that one day they will rejoin us. They have kind of dropped most of the doctrine that Joseph Smith restored. It's more of a world peace, kumbaya, and patty cake your way to heaven at this point. Good people, though. Every year we'd have a Book of Mormon symposium where we would gather together. We'd have BYU professors come out and others, and they'd have their scholars. We do sing-alongs with them in the old stone church, which is right off to the left of that building. Sing their songs, and they'd sing "Come, Come, Ye Saints" with us. And
But they wouldn't see the prophet followed. We thank thee, O God, for them.
they wouldn't sing "We Thank Thee, O God, for a prophet." Interesting. We four former members of that church. One is was the state president in Liberty, Missouri. He's the deputy attorney general of the state of Missouri. Convert who, when he was 19, went on a mission. As I said, he's now in Area 4070, Jeremiah Morgan. Good man. We're very close with Elder Morgan. Another former member of one of the restoration branches, leader of one, is Dennis Cato. He's the stake president in Independence. Been a stake president for 9 years. A good man. Used to be the organ player. He's a professional organ player. He played in the temple.
Oh, you've got those stuff. John Davis is organ. You were
Yeah.
a Cato.
Okay, another good convert. John Davies. He played the organ there and at the big auditorium. One night, two elders knocked on his door. His granddaughter came running in and said, Grandpa, the Mormons are here. And he got up and he went to the door. He said, I was going to tell him I appreciate what you're doing and continue the good work, but I'm not interested. I have what I need. He said, I went to that door and looked out through the screen and it was light. There was light in their eyes. I invited him into my home and the room lit up. He's now the stake executive secretary of the Independent Stake, a temple worker, a fine man. Good. I talked to John this morning for a few minutes.
You can tell him what he said about how much acres.
Independence, 60 acres is the temple site, of which we own most of that. The actual temple lot is owned by the Hedrickites. And this is their building there, the temple. It's right to the left.
Yeah.
That's a sign they put up there. That's where they found the cornerstones of the temple. Joseph Smith dedicated the site. Sidney Rigdon, I believe it was, that dedicated the area as a center place of Zion. Any questions or comments thus far?
And the temple, it was going to be a temple, but there was 24 other buildings that were going to be erected.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, on this site.
Right, and that will come in the coming day. It's exciting. When they announced the Independence Temple, I bet even though the prophet tells us not to, there'll be a gasp at General Conference. As well as perhaps someday the Kirtland Temple.
And last year, President Cato's stake baptized 100 people just in his stake alone. So Independence is growing, but it's kind of a dying,
A blighted area.
So,
But the Lord will redeem it in a coming day. The church is strong there in Independence. There's a stake in Independence. There's 7 stakes in the mission. We don't go very far south in Missouri. Going to Kansas, there are 2 stakes on the east border of Kansas, Olathe and Lenexa. And then we go up to the Iowa border. As you know, the history of the Saints came there in about 1831. The Coltsville Saints from New York were some of the first to settle it. They settled in the Kaw region. There's now a Kaw River Ward. It's a Spanish ward in Kansas City there. Good leaders and good people. A lot of converts in leadership. Okay, so the Saints, you know the story. They were expelled from Jackson County. They got pushed up against the Missouri River. There's a story. One night they had them stranded. The ferry wasn't running. They were in the mud on the banks of the Missouri River, and the mob was closing in when the Leonid meteor shower happened in the heavens. And it was so brilliant that the mobs paused and they didn't close in for the kill. It's the inspiration for the song, Now Let Us Rejoice in the Day of Salvation. Been across the Missouri River many times right there. On our way into Independence. Any other? There's a trail of blood out of Jackson County into Clay County. They robbed. They burned the houses down, destroyed livestock, furniture, murdered and raped. The prophet Joseph got an agreement from the governor of Missouri before Governor Boggs, but they would restore the lands to the Saints in Jackson County. And Joseph organized a small band of brothers, 200 people, to protect the Saints after the governor restored them back to Jackson County. The governor was a liar. He died a nameless death. It never happened, but the Zion's camp, they went on the tour. They were down there at Fishing River in Missouri, which is north of Jackson County. The state, there was a militia of 500 coming in, they were going to kill them, and they could have. We've got to remember these good saints were from the East Coast. They were Northeasterners from England. They didn't know how to fight in the woods. They didn't know how to fight, and a lot of them didn't know how to shoot very well. They would have destroyed them, but we know the Lord protects us. He's promised us that throughout the scriptures. There's a great promise in the 109th section of the dedication of the Kirkland Temple. The Lord protects us. And that night at the fishing river, they were on one side and the militia was on the other side. We've been there. There's no markers. Church owns none of the property there. But it rained so hard that night, the fishing river raised 40 feet. 40 feet. And it's done that since. One of the members in Excelsior Springs, which is right along the fishing river, said one day it rained so hard, it flooded, it went up over the bridge, and there was a container, you know, these big shipping containers that rolled over the bridge with the water. But the Lord protected him. And he had another purpose in mind. He was training and purging and helping the people be prepared for what was coming. They went on up to far west. This is a picture that Sister Dalton, a young lady, painted, and she gave us a copy of that. This is from the west, looking east. Her depiction of what that might have looked way back in the day with the four cornerstones of the temple. Sweet young lady. We came out here to Layton, and she was serving a mission in Layton when we got here. Far west, as you can read, had a population of about 5,000, very organized. You go there now and you can find no evidence that anybody was ever there other than the temple site. A sacred place in itself. You know, during COVID, we were trying to keep our missionaries healthy emotionally and spiritually, and they were locked up in their apartments. It was a tough time for missionaries. And you couldn't meet in Jackson County together. You couldn't gather together. You couldn't do it in Clay County, but you could in the far west. So I'm asking for forgiveness rather than permission for your child. So we're going to hold some zone conferences at the far west temple site.
What years were you there?
17 to 20.
Yeah, but I couldn't remember.
Yeah. And so we met up there, and then somebody took a picture of us when we were having our closing prayer there. We had our zone conference offsite. We came on the site for a testimony meeting and closing prayer. It was powerful. The missionaries were so excited. For 3 weeks they had something to look forward to, and it helped for 3 weeks to distract them from the challenges of COVID. You know how things get on social media. I got a call from Elder Gifford Nielsen, the area president, about a week later, and he said, "President Love, what are you doing?" And I said, "Well, we're just trying to keep our missionaries healthy." And where'd you come up with that idea? Well, I prayed about it. And he said, "I hope nobody gets sick or catches." And we didn't have any. No missionary had COVID while we were there in the 5 first months of COVID. We were blessed. Okay, during the far west era, they did settle Adam-on-Diamond, Lyman White, and others. My wife has Missouri history. She's a Woolsey. One of the Woolsey girls married a guy named John D. Lee, and he had a cabin at Adam-on-Diamond. If I can't say too much here, let me know. Okay. Very special place with a rich past and a promising and very exciting future. I think more people than you know will be there in the coming day. Daniel says 10,000 times 10,000. And I think that's 100 million. Or in other words, there'll be a lot of people there. It will be not too restricted. This is us. First of all, I think that marker designates a sacred spot. We're looking out over the valley. Every 6 weeks, we'd be at Adamondiama with missionaries that were to return home the following day. We see the sights, let them see the sights. We'd walk down the Preacher's Rock, which is where I'm standing there. We'd send them out in the almond grove, which the acoustics. I could almost whisper things and they could hear me. We do Simon Says sometimes with them. Then we give them a few minutes. It's the first time you can be away from your companion or another missionary. You go find yourself alone and determine the path that you're going to take. And then we gather together and have a testimony meeting. Sometimes we do it out.
We tried it once at Adamondiama and out on the old foundation.
There's a foundation there by Preacher's Rock.
We never did it again because on his white shirt, I could just see the ticks. And that night, I think I pulled ticks out of 2 or 3 missionaries.
But they have a little duplex / chapel there at Adamondiama. They let us use that building for our testimony meeting. There's some fine missionaries.
This is Preacher Rock.
That's where I guess the story is Joseph Smith stood on that rock and preached to the people in that almond grove where the acoustics are so good. If you haven't been there, they've done some amazing things out there, straightening it up and opening it up. We were just there a month ago, 6 weeks ago. During the Far West era, some members were kidnapped. A group gathered together to go rescue them. They went down to Crooked River. Sister Love and I have been here. It's on private property, not owned by the church, but members have relationships with the landowners, and we were able to there's some missionaries walking down the bank.
Beautiful area.
With us. That's where the first apostle of this dispensation was martyred, in that battle of Crooked River. I think we lost a couple and they lost 2 or 3. Also in the Far West era, well, October 30th, this is Hans Mill. There's not a lot there. The church acquired that from the reorganized for the Community of Christ. I think in the last 10 years. We bought 600 acres there.
A quick question. There's a monument there now, granite monument there at Hans Mill. It looks like to be fairly new. Was that there when you were there?
It wasn't.
I didn't know that's all there was when we were there. Was
And a little one on the ground.
a concrete one that the Community of Christ place.
They have done some fencing out there that we've heard about, but I haven't.
Try to keep it cleaned up.
Why they don't build on Hans Mill and improve it is it floods every year.
Yeah. They are trying to acquire some gravel. It's right up on this bench up here from a farmer, but he thinks it's more valuable than churches. And they do a visitor center perhaps, or a place at least where there's a parking lot where you can walk down. They put a bridge across Shoal Creek.
I asked that question because there's some errors on the monument in terms of the names of people there that were put in the well that were not put in the well.
Oh, really?
And I'm just wondering if
That might be the old cement one. I don't know.
No, you said it's pretty recent. When were you there?
I have never been there, but a guy, a friend of mine took a picture this past year of the monument.
They have looked for the well and never found it.
Yeah, they've taken track hose out there that with all the flooding and the Shoal Creek moving, they dug 15 feet down, found Huggy's dive They don't know. And maybe we're not supposed to find that. Hey, maybe we're not supposed to find it. That's where 17 people were murdered. The Smith family was hit hard. Little Sardius was in the men all went to the blacksmith shop to defend it. And that was no match for the woodsmen. They came from Breckenridge, a town not far from Haun's Mill. A blighted town today, I might add. The missionaries are not received well at all there.
So that's the spot where the name.
Oh, that could be.
In Breckenridge.
You're right.
Where
With the stone.
the millstone
Yeah.
is there. They proudly show the millstone where that. I bet that is where the names are. Yeah. But they attacked, killed everybody almost everybody in the blacksmith shop. They got down, opened the door. A little 9-year-old boy took off running. They shot him dead. And then there was another young man, 9-year-old or 10-year-old Sardius Smith, was hiding under the billows, and they walked up, put a pistol to his head and pulled the trigger.
Yeah, they're pretty huge too.
Yeah. So their other brother
Had his hip one.
had his hip blown away. The father was dead. 2 brothers were dead. The mother built the poultice, prayed to the Lord to rebuild the hip, and he got some cartilage there, and he walked to the valley. I think they settled up in Morgan, Smith family. Let's see, we got a little ahead for things out of order.
He did?
Where's the M where they put Joseph in change?
I thought you wanted this first. Oh, I don't know.
Anyway, where are we at?
Right there. Because you said when he was arrested in Far West, they took him to this little jail.
Yeah. Joseph Smith on the 31st, he was supposed to come and have a parlay with the militia that had come up there. And the extermination order had been issued before Haun's Mill. But they put Joseph in chains just south, about a quarter mile south of the temple site. And took him and others. They took him to this. It was a home in the past. The members of the church had bought it. They put a marker up with this on it. And that's where Joseph stood and rebuked the guards. And Parley P. Pratt, you ought to look that up, what Parley P. Pratt said about the prophet. I've seen kings and judges, but I've never seen dignity like I saw that night. And I'm quoting it poorly by a man who stood in chains. From there, they moved to Liberty Jail. Well, we're still in Richmond. They have the 3 witness monument. Oliver Cowdery's buried right there. Two good missionaries. Boy, you get close to those kids, you just makes my allergies flare up. You know, it's the craziest thing. You get out there and these young people come out with full faith. And they want to serve the Lord for the most part. There's a couple that you need to work with, but they don't know how to work. They're not farm boys anymore. It's the hardest thing by far they've ever done. You watch them demonstrate their faith, and you pray with them, you cry with them, and you work with them, and you watch these young people. They get around that corner, they just accelerate and go airborne, and they see miracles. Their mission means everything to them. There are a couple that we take to the airport after 2 years, and we back handspring all the way back up. Liberty Jail, they've rebuilt it. It's not exactly where it was, and most of the materials are not authentic. They say there may be some of the stones that are the same. They're not sure. They were in there for about 4 months, where some of the most beautiful verses of scripture ever penned were received. Doctrine and Covenants, that section on leadership, 121. Man might as well stretch forth these arms off the Missouri River and his free force this hinder the Almighty God who had a knowledge upon the latter day saints. Wow. I've got a picture here trying to stop the Missouri with my arm. It did. It was extreme circumstance. We've been in there many times. All our incoming missionaries would come. We'd take them to Liberty Jail and take a picture. And a special place, you know, he cried out, "How long, Lord? How long?" Well, one day we had, saw President Nelson came on a private visit and said, "I want to come to Liberty Jail tomorrow." I said, he said, "Is that okay?" Yeah. So we went to Liberty Jail at 9 o'clock and the sister said, "What are you doing here? You don't come to the jail in the morning." "I'm here today, just checking on you." And then President Nelson, President Ballard walked through the door. And they took us in that jail rotunda and taught us about Prophet Joseph Smith. That was a special experience. After the picture, he walked over and grabbed me, locked arms with me and said, "Let's walk, President." We walked out the doors and down the sidewalk, and the security guys were running around trying to get in front of us, but he wasn't paying attention. And he stopped, President Nelson. He stopped, he kept holding my arm, but he turned and he faced me. So and he said, "President Love, how are the missionaries doing?" I said, "Oh, they're doing the best they can, President." He said, "You tell them that I love them." And little President Nelson, so you know that we love you and we're great for you too. It was a neat experience. There they are in their own kind of teaching us about, there's some special things said there that I'll not share with you.
And tell them about other Ballard being relatives to the
Oh yeah,
Smith family.
the elder Ballard is Joseph Smith and his uncle, kind of. Yeah, his grandfather's fireman.
Now, there was mannequins when we first went into our mission. They took those out and we were really happy to have
Yeah,
them out.
they were in
They're
sad
so
shape.
dusty.
I thought the one representing Joseph Smith right here, to me, looked like Barry Manilow on it. Just ruined the whole jail experience. They go walk in there and I can hear him sing, "Looks like we made it." They got him out and we got rid of the mannequins.
Tell them about others, was it Flores that lifted the blanket?
Oh, Elder Christopherson came and he wanted to go see the jail off hours, so we took him and took him down into the jail here. And this is a little wall in the front. It's a cutout. But he said, "Can I get down in there?" And yeah, you do whatever you want. Usually they don't, but he got down in there and he pulled the blanket away and brushed the straw away, and he put his hands on those stones for a couple of minutes. And he brushed the straw back, folded the blanket back over, and said, "I'm good." You just want to have that experience. This is where the man's trying to stop the mighty Missouri River in its decreed course. This is out near Fort Leavenworth, the Northern Battalion. This is my only association in my family with Missouri. They crossed through the corner of Missouri and went to Fort Leavenworth at the Mormon Battalion to get muster, to get their equipment and some training and direction. Most of my family is pre-Missouri era, or post-Missouri era. Sister Love with John D. Lee and others has some history there. How many of you have Missouri history in your ancestry? The Adamses, heard about Joseph Smith in Adams County, Illinois. Grandpa met the prophet Joseph, joined the church, sold his farm there, and came west with the saints. The Loves, they came from Scotland, got out of the coal mines and came to Almy, Wyoming. We think they joined the church there. They were smarter. They came on the railroad. We have the temple there now. It's been a great blessing to the area. Time right. We'll get. Well, I love the temple. Well, the area presence he had said missionaries will go once a quarter, once every 3 months. And I thought that was good. But as I prayed about it, I called Brother Suarez, who was our area president there before he was in the 12. And I said, I really think if we can double that, if we can go once every transfer, every 6 weeks, I think it'll be a blessing to us. And he said, well, you're there to help the living, not the dead. And I just, it's such a powerful influence in our lives and in the lives of those young people. I said, you know, if we can go twice as often, I promise you baptism will go up of the living. He said, well, I'm going to give you an exception. The pressure's on you now. It was true. Those missionaries were so uplifted by the temple and by communing with the Lord in the Lord's house. And he came out armed with power, with his name more fully upon him, and angels around him to bear him up. And we saw the work move forward. That's President Nelson. I had a call one day, the temple president called and said, President Love, we want you in the temple at 1 o'clock on Monday. I said, well, you're closed on Monday. And he said, well, you're supposed to be there. He said, what's going on? He said, you can't tell anybody, but President Nelson's coming with President Ballard. They want him there in a session. So we showed up at the temple. And the temple president and his wife were the witness couple. The counselors were the ordinance workers. Next to the temple president was President Nelson. Next to him, President Ballard. I was sitting behind them and the secretary that come to 12 next to me. And that was the session. Helps. And President Ballard a little bit and we needed some help. Yes. You know, I know he was a prophet long before this. It was a special experience for me. It's a special place. From there, he went to the community of Christ, did some business with them. And then came to the jail the next morning, they're up to have him on Dion.
You were there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
When he came,
It was probably great.
it was great for our seniors.
Oh, yeah.
We'd never met a prophet. We'd met Elder Nelson before and the bread of a seminar, but we'd never met a prophet. Louise and I. Special, the public affairs, we took the missionaries and sang at the Royals game, Kansas City Royals. That was a powerful missionary experience. I went out to get a drink of water, and some guys came up and they had their drinks with them. You know what I'm talking about? Not members. And they said, saw the badge and they said, who are you guys? You're making more noise than any area in the stadium and you're not even drinking. And it gave me the missionary opportunity to share with who we are and what we do. Other things, members, the city of Hamilton was a dying city. That's up near far west. A member of the church opened a quilting shop, and then she started buying storefronts in the city of Hamilton. And it's the quilting capital of the world now. They get tour groups out of Europe They come in, they have accommodations for them there. They build a big warehouse, they ship out. When we were there was like 7,000 packages a day of material to people that order it for their building. They even have a man cave. One store fronts a man cave. You can go sit in a reclining leather chair and sleep while your wife spends all your money. Sister Dawn, she said, we need missionaries in Hamilton. I said, we tried to find housing. We can't find housing. And she called me a couple weeks later and said, I bought a house, get your missionaries. And she's the owner and founder of Missouri Star Quilts.
That must be it.
I'll sit down. Any questions or comments?
Yeah, question. You know that original map that you put up? How close are those locations on
Okay,
that map?
it looks like they're right together, doesn't it?
Yeah, looks like a walking tour.
If I knew how to do it, I'd go
We
faster.
live right between the temple and Liberty Jail. We were about 3-4 miles from each. And it took us an hour to get to Adirondack. Well, big hour and 20 minutes to get from Liberty. We're right here up to Adirondack. Gallatin, I didn't mention Gallatin. Gallatin's where they had that on voting day. There was a lot of friction and a couple of fights broke out. Todd's Mill is probably 15 minutes from anything.
Haunts Mill, was 10 to 12 miles from far west, and that map.
Yeah, to the east, so far west.
To get to Hans Mill is a terrible road. And if it's at all muddy, your car gets,
They've had a lot.
and then when you
Farmers
go,
charge $600 to pull them out. Yeah,
so you never go out Hans Mill on a rainy day.
need to do some work there. They've done a lot of work and improved the roads. The county's let them improve them, but when the foot of water comes through there, it all gets washed away.
Would Liberty and Gallatin be 30 miles, 40 miles apart?
It's an hour.
From Adirondack home to far west is about 25 miles.
Okay. So that's not wrong.
But it's country road.
Country road.
Yeah.
And all your missionaries were in the far west state. They helped with different wards and units up there. We had no jurisdiction over the missionaries at Adirondack. If I understand it right, we have emeritus general authorities, you and others that come out and check every 6 weeks, stay for 4 or 5 days, and then go home and report to. Yeah. So in essence, he's the mission president
He is the mission.
of Adirondack.
We have no jurisdiction over the young missionaries.
True.
We just take care of the senior couple with about 15 senior
Couple. Yeah, that would be a wonderful mission to serve there, like good people.
Where's Kansas City from there?
Kansas City is all this area. Independence is kind of a suburb of Kansas City. There's Kansas City, Kansas City.
Independence is now a suburb of Kansas City.
Yeah, they're all connected.
Right on the edge of Independence is the stadiums for the Chiefs and the Royals. They're side by side, right on the edge of Independence. And they did take the Super Bowl the year we were there, and it was amazing.
Yeah,
And Andy Reid is a member of the church,
good member.
good member of the church.
So I saw him at church when he could.
During COVID, he did a Zoom meeting with us.
Devotional for all the missionaries, got them fired up, ready to run it back. I think it was something he tells these players, but he said, elders and sisters, you want to be a companion with a wet noodle? Well, then don't be a wet noodle. It was a lot of fun. Again, just a minute, I'll get to you. You want to give tickets every year for preaching and hand out 20 or 30 tickets to the ward to give to less active people or non-members who the missionaries wanted to go. I mean, said, President Love, I need 2 missionaries to go with them. I can't babysit them. And so I picked a set of missionaries in that area, and one elder just cried. He just cried and said, I need you to go to the Chiefs game and help with these people.
But he cried because it was his birthday. And he thought that we knew it was his birthday.
We never changed that. Yeah.
No, but he just was so thrilled.
You have another question, brother?
Well, I just think everyone would be interested to know and told me about how the people in that area now receive, what do they feel about Mormons? Is there still a resentment? Is there, a recognition of the past, or I thought your comments to you were really interesting.
For the most part, some don't like Mormons.
More out of the far west.
Yeah, out in the more rural areas out near
Gallatin.
But that's been handed down for generations. For the most part, people are gracious with them. They see young people trying to do some good and help people with their faith in Christ. And they, you know what, we're not interested. They don't get yelled at a lot or doors slammed a lot.
When we first got there, we had flip phones, just old-time flip phones. And then they chose our mission to be kind of a test mission for smartphones. We got parts smartphones and got training. And about then was when President Nelson became prophet. And from that moment, you could feel the air, the wind rush into the mission, because things just kept coming, and he knew COVID was coming. So he was preparing missionaries to do missionary work in a different way. And it was so amazing to be in it as mission presidents and watch this. It was just amazing.
Baptisms have gone up since COVID. Yeah, people they'll respond to a complete stranger on Facebook, but they will not answer the door. And we can go into China now. You don't have to send a missionary there, you can go in. Yeah.
This is
We didn't share that, did we?
no.
This is young. I got a call from the visitor center one day. The sisters called and said, we've got a young man. He speaks pretty good English, but he's from Shanghai, China. He got a master's degree from North Carolina State. And he showed up at the visitor center, said, I've read the Book of Mormon, know it's true, and I want to be baptized in Missouri. He'd gone home to Shanghai, read the Book of Mormon, and he came back. And so I didn't know what to do. It's baptizing, but there's a protocol. The church hooked me up with the mission president in Hong Kong, who has jurisdiction for the Chinese states. And they said, you've got to create him an address there, which we did. We got to teach him the lessons. We had a young man, he went to California on a Mandarin speaking mission. This young man right here. And he had some severe anxiety. The mission president said, you can't be a missionary, and sent him home. He appealed to the brethren, and they sent him out to us. So he spoke Mandarin. He taught this young man the lessons in his native language. And he was baptized, not in Missouri, but the Little Blue. Somebody was mentioning the Big Blue. Yeah. Went home, because you can't be baptized unless you're baptized by a family member in China. Well, first of all, we baptized him, confirmed him, got him the priesthood, and took him to the temple and did baptisms for the dead. Sent him home to China, and he baptized his mom and dad. Shanghai. There was another question.
What about the prophecies of people that are going back of the prophecies of the temple, how it's going to be built? I've got images in my mind back from the 60s where they had a big central temple and 12
speeders around representing all the 12 tribes of Israel. And that was back in the 60s, so I'm curious where we're at now and what we're expecting or predicting for the future. Whether more up to date, more modern viewpoint.
I think most of that happens after the Savior returns. I don't know other child. And
On 24.
24 other buildings.
yeah, now, a lot of good saints have moved there, compelled to go there. And
I don't know which sermon it was, but somebody said that the Polynesians would build the temple, would go to Missouri to build the temple. And so there's a lot of Polynesians. We have Polynesian wards. And I learned to love the Polynesian people, but they came because they thought they were going to build that temple. Maybe they will. They're strong, strong people.
yeah, don't mess with them.
An interesting story. And let me see. This one that owns the temple site. They started building the temple there. There was a foundation there. But when President Truman came back after he was president or during election,
President Truman's from Independence.
yes, his hometown, they thought that was such a big mess to have that. Oh, somebody stole all their money. And so they didn't have enough to finish it. So it just sat there open, and they thought it was so ugly that the town pitched in money to bury those foundations again for when Truman came through. And so
Who are the people that own the temple?
this is the Church of Christ.
Church of Christ, they call it Church of Christ Temple lot to differentiate from the, they used to be the Hedrickites, a splinter group. And now they've changed their name. They call us the Brighamites. Some of them. It was all Brigham.
They are the ones that built the temples.
Hedrickites. It
Hedrick.
was.
That was his last name, Charles Hedrick.
What was it? Brandon Hendrick.
You know, in the caretaker, and I guess he runs it, his father died who used to run it. Have you been in the Church of Christ?
Yes.
And met the guy?
Yes.
Every time I've been there, he's been just a little bit combative. And I wouldn't give him a fight, of course, but he said, I said, you don't even have temple ordinances. What are you going to do with the temple? He says, you're right, we don't, but we know you want it, and so you're not going to get it. Yeah, the farmer part of me just wants to put him right on the ground right there. Yeah, we don't do that. We had some marvelous experiences. We're just humbled that the Lord had the trust in us to call us there. I was just got my letter to be released as a stake president. We started our mission papers. We wanted to go on a mission, and we got a call to Anchorage, Alaska, to be missionaries. We were so excited, and that was in like the end of October, and we were in before President Uchtdorf in November, and he says, "You're not going to Alaska anymore." And we received the call to come to this sacred place. We got to get to Alaska to get some missionary work. Jesus is the Christ. He stands at the helm. It was a blessing to watch he does with the heart of a young person when they offer him their whole son. It's a sacrifice. I know he came to restore the truth through the prophet Joseph Smith. I know Russ Williams is a prophet today. The Book of Mormon blessed my life and brought me closer to Christ, along with the temple, than anything. I love for and pray for the day when he comes again and rules and reigns the world government from Independence, Missouri. I offer my witness to these truths and express my appreciation to you for this opportunity to share in the name of the Lord Jesus Christ. Amen.